A law firm in Houston has just filed a massive $10 billion lawsuit against Travis Scott that is representing just over 1,500 concert-goers that attended his Astroworld Festival. Previously, the largest lawsuit that came out of this tragedy was the one for $2 billion, but now they have merged a lot of these lawsuits into one. The Houston law firm is demanding this amount be considered as the proper resolution for more than 1,500 cases filed on behalf of the Astroworld victims. Attorney Brent Kuhn, who is the founder of Brent Kuhn & Associates, announced this massive lawsuit against the rapper and other defendants, saying that they will be representing 1,547 concert-goers, which is more than any other legal group has done so far. Although Brent may have an edge on his competition because he has not only litigated high-profile mass tragedies across the country for the last 35 years, but he also ran a promotion company for 20 years as well. So he is more than familiar with how a large event like Astroworld is supposed to be planned out. In a press release, attorney Brent Kuhn said, "What happened at Astroworld was an unconscionable tragedy, and it is important that justice is served for all those impacted. I believe our firm is best suited to help lead this case, not only because of the number of victims who have selected our firm to represent them in this action, but due to the fact that we possess the extensive legal experience as demonstrated by our lead counsel work on many plant explosions, product recalls, and other mass tort actions." In addition to this press release, Brent's firm also noted that they are demanding that the legislative action includes crowd control planning specialists to certify events, mandated training programs for event preparation, and criminal liability for any wrongdoing. On his legal team will also be Dr. G. Keith Still, who is a world-renowned crowd surge stampede expert. He will be there to provide advice on the next steps that public officials should be taking to ensure what happened in Houston never happens again. Texas Governor Greg Abbott also announced that Keith will be serving as an advisory and consulting role to the governmental investigative panels that are looking into this tragedy. Continuing in his statement to the press, Brent Kuhn said, "We will roll over every rock in this matter. Everyone associated with these types of events has the power to halt conduct that is resulting in injury to attendees. It has been terribly disappointing that some defendants have already gone public misstating and downplaying their responsibilities that attach to events such as this." Now, something that Brent has touched on that we haven't really seen a lot coming from these attorneys is when he alleged that no company or individual involved in this event even made an effort to try to stop the event when it got out of control. They all just stood by and let it happen, something that he called shameful before adding, "Trying to publicly dodge culpability is irresponsible and inconsistent with what really goes on behind the scenes in these events. I know, I run them and I have had to stop one and did so before anyone got hurt. It's part of the job." And this $10 billion lawsuit filed by Brent has been submitted as a request first with the Harris County District Court system, where they will, if accepted, consolidate all of the cases involved. As of now, though, a hearing has been scheduled for December 13th. This definitely has to be a huge message to Travis Scott that these victims will not be paid off nor dismissed. He recently tried to file a dismissal in court to get him out of being named in all of these lawsuits, but the attorneys have only become more persistent. With his latest filing, though, the total number of plaintiffs has risen to nearly 2,800. And knowing that 50,000 fans were in attendance, it's safe to say that there may even be more lawsuits on the horizon. Even if there's not, though, this one will definitely take a very long time for the courts to clear up. Travis Scott has finally broken his legal silence following the tragedy that took place at Astroworld, but it was not the response that many were hoping for. Scott has gone into full denial mode, and he's not alone. Live Nation is also trying to deny the allegations against them as well. On Monday, Travis Scott was referred to by his real name, Jacques B. Webster II. So fancy. And on that day, he also responded to 11 lawsuits that put him as the main defendant regarding his concert in Houston that resulted in 10 people losing their lives. People magazine, along with a few other news outlets, were able to actually get a hand on 6 of the 11 responses filed, and they said that all of them were nearly identical. Within the filings, Travis and his company have generally denied the allegations made in the lawsuits, and then added that they respectfully request that the claims against these defendants be dismissed with prejudice, and that these defendants be granted such other and further relief both at law and in equity to which they are entitled. His company that I'm referring to is Cactus Jack Records, which is being represented by law firms O'Melveny and Myers, as well as Yetter, Coleman, and Tribble, in more than 200 lawsuits that have Travis as the defendant. Rolling Stone was also reporting that Live Nation and its subsidiary Score More have also denied the allegations, as well as the Harris County Sports and Convention Corporation that owns Energy Park, where the festival took place. But despite denying allegations, they did not file for their dismissal like Travis tried to do. Live Nation has been particularly scrutinized because of how big they are when it comes to producing live events. Live Nation is one of the largest show promoters in the world, so if they don't get held accountable for this, it could set an awful precedent. We saw many videos from that evening, but one in particular was especially disturbing. There was a video of a young woman who climbed up onto the side of the stage and was desperately trying to tell the cameraman to stop the show. She repeatedly said that people were losing their life in the crowd, and all he did was swat her away as he continued to record Travis Scott's performance. Despite chants coming from the crowd of people wanting to stop the show, Travis carried carried on for another 40 minutes before the show was finally shut down, and within that time frame, he and Drake are said to have actually amped up the chaos that was already overwhelming the crowd. After learning about what happened hours later, Kylie Jenner quickly published a statement where she expressed her grief over the lives that were lost and then tried to make it clear that she and Travis had no idea of what was going on at the time. However, city officials are still investigating where the problem started in the crowd that soon turned to pandemonium. Houston police is also putting most of the blame on Travis, though, after footage emerged of Houston cops just casually filming the show during what they later called was a mass casualty event. At one point, he is even heard saying, "Who asked me to stop? You all know what you came here to do." And concert-goer Billy Nassar said that he became frustrated when the concert continued despite the obvious chaos that was happening on the ground. He went on to tell CNN, "I wanted the music to stop and I wanted everyone around me to realize what's going on, but people didn't have much self-awareness. Kids were just going crazy and partying for the festival and they weren't actually paying attention to the bodies dropping behind them." In addition to making that video apologizing to fans for what happened, Travis also released this statement that says, "I'm absolutely devastated by what took place last night. My prayers go out to the families and all those impacted by what happened at Astroworld Festival. Houston PD has my total support as they continue to look into this tragic loss of life. I am committed to working together with the Houston community to heal and support the families in need. Thank you to Houston PD, Fire Department, and Energy Park for their immediate response and support. Love you all." Live Nation, who also hosted the event, put out a statement as well that said, "Heartbroken for those lost and impacted at Astroworld last night. We will continue working to provide as much information and assistance as possible to the local authorities as they investigate the situation." And according to an investigation that was done by the Houston Chronicle, though, they described how organizers were concerned prior to the event about adequate staffing and were worried about last-minute poorly trained hires that were made security guards. Billboard also reported that there is a potential for all of these lawsuits to be consolidated into one massive case. In a court document released by Billboard, it states, "Transfer of all of these lawsuits to a single pretrial judge for consolidated and coordinated pretrial proceedings will eliminate duplicative discovery, conserve resources of the judiciary, avoid conflicting legal rulings and scheduling, and otherwise promote the just and efficient conduct of all actions." This dismissal could also be Travis feeling a little salty about his offer to pay for funeral expenses being declined. If you recall, more than half of the victims' families turned down the offer and said through their attorneys that they would be continuing with legal action instead. Hulu is facing some backlash right now after they were quick to release a Travis Scott documentary called Astroworld Concert from Hell. Now, this new documentary released by Hulu recapped the horrific events that took place at Travis Scott's festival in Houston just last month. However, as I mentioned, the program was quickly pulled after it received a lot of social media backlash. The documentary was produced by KTRK, a local Houston station owned and operated by ABC, which means that you can actually still watch the special, but it will be on an ABC website instead of, Hulu. In a statement to the press, a spokesperson for Hulu said, "This was an investigative local news special from ABC 13 KTRK TV in Houston that originally aired on November 20th. This was not a Hulu documentary and has since been removed to avoid confusion." This statement was put out after several tweets condemning the documentary began to go viral. In one tweet about the release of the special on Hulu, a user said, "Hulu making a documentary about Astroworld is in poor taste all around. People are still burying their loved ones. The legal cases haven't even started. Great documentaries are done when all the facts are laid out. Not enough time has passed to fully discuss this." Later adding, "Didn't expect this response. I looked into it and I see it's an ABC special, but it's still too soon. I still stick to my earlier opinion. It reads tacky." However, some people in the replies of that tweet I noticed were siding against her. The main defense of this latest documentary is that it's not a documentary at all, and really if you do watch it, you're actually just watching a long news piece that a local station put together. You could perhaps call it an investigative report, but I believe the confusion started because it was listed on Hulu. Maybe it was a problem of assumption. People see that pop up in their feed and then they automatically assume that it must be some kind of documentary, and so they take their anger straight to Twitter without even watching it. In response to the people calling it a news special though, this user replied with, "Okay, this got out of hand quickly. Anyway, I explained my stance. I'm fully aware that it's a news special. How it's packaged was tasteless in my opinion. Not every news story is covered in this way so quickly." Muting this. Now, in the description of what was labeled the Concert from Hell news special, it describes the program as, "Travis Scott's Astroworld Festival was supposed to be the concert of a lifetime, but it turned into a tragic nightmare. A minute-by-minute look at what happened in the crowd, the young victims who were killed, and what happens next." Now, aside from the squabbles over what type of content this was, some that got to watch the special did find it to be quite good. One user tweeted in praise of it saying, "Unpopular opinion, I watched the Hulu Astroworld documentary and it was good. It spoke with grieving families, concert goers, and shared who the victims were. It was not a negative slant. It cleared up misinformation after large tragedies tragedies, these documentaries are up within weeks. With another adding, "Interesting that you mentioned this documentary, as I watched it too and thought that it was very well made and very informative. My heart goes out to all of the families that lost loved ones at the event." And it's strange though that if it were a documentary, people believe that this is inappropriate timing, but then if it was a news special, it's fine because they're just reporting on what happened. But they're still profiting off of that as well within the immediate tragedy. Following the Blount family rejecting Travis Scott's offer to pay for Ezra's funeral expenses, more families have also denied his cash. Scott had offered to pay for the burial costs for all of those who had lost their life while attending his Astroworld Festival. However, now apparently half of the victims' families have rejected him. Amid multiple massive lawsuits, Scott made this offer, but the lawyer for the family of 14-year-old victim John Hilgert called the gesture demeaning and inappropriate. Attorneys representing 4 of the 10 victims say that they've declined the offer and added that they would prefer to let the courts decide what actions give the victims the most justice. Richard Mithoff, the attorney for the family of John Hilgert, said in a statement, "It was not an offer the Hilgerts were going to seriously consider. Of all the things this case is about, that's the least of any concern. This family is set on making change and ensuring this never happens at a concert again. I find offering to pay for funerals frankly demeaning and really inappropriate to the magnitude of the tragedy that unfolded." And if you recall, Travis Scott's representatives claimed that he had absolutely personally reached out to the victims' families to provide support. Well, turns out that that was also false. Philip Corboy, the attorney for the families of 21-year-old friends Jacob Jurinick and Franco Patino, said that he had originally been contacted by Travis Scott's criminal attorney before then getting a follow-up from Scott's new attorney Daniel Petruccelli. Corboy then said that after speaking with the families, he realized quickly that all Travis was trying to do was lessen the public outcry on his case. It took the families about 3 seconds to say no to the offer. Philip also believes that this resounding no only happened because Travis reached out to the families through his attorney rather than reaching out himself, which just came off as disingenuous and impersonal. He goes on to say, "If he's trying to impress upon the families that he's sincere and has concern for them and realize that funerals can be expensive, what Scott's team did is not the way to do it. You don't get a piece of paper in the mail from a lawyer in Beverly Hills who says he represents Travis Scott. These families are raw right now. That lacks any personal touch." Tony Busby, who represents the family of 21-year-old Axel Acosta, was especially fuming over Scott's offer to pay for funeral expenses. Busby said that while he did receive a call from Scott's attorney, he never returned it, adding in a statement to the press, "It's bullshit. If you gave a about these families, you wouldn't have to put out a press release for everyone to see saying he's willing to pay for a funeral." He then says that Scott should have given the families more time to process this loss while also taking responsibility for his actions, adding, "Let the families grieve and shut up, that's it. When something like this happens, there's not a whole lot someone like Travis Scott could do to assuage their pain. He says he feels sorry for them, but he's quick to say it wasn't his fault. He's no different than any defendant pointing fingers to someone else. They don't want funeral expenses from him. Whatever we get from him, we're going to get through the court system." And attorney Michael Lyons, who represents the family of 27-year-old victim Danish Bag, said that the family is in a civil lawsuit right now against Travis and others involved in the event. When speaking with the press, their attorney said, "We received a written offer from Travis Scott's attorney Dan Petruccelli indicating that he would pay $7,500 in funeral burial costs, and my clients are rejecting that. As for their reasoning, the family said that they do not want Travis Scott anywhere near the burial of their son," adding, "You can infer that when a parent has to bury their child, that they're not really interested in people who may have contributed to that being involved," which is a very valid point that Travis Scott needs to be respectful of. There's no doubt that he feels remorse for what he did, and he probably was advised to only speak through his attorney, but man, it was a big missed opportunity. Had he personally contacted those families, it could have been a very different story here.